The Ozark Mountains in 1862 were wild, unforgiving, and full of secrets. War between North and South raged miles away, yet in these hills another kind of dread lurked. Travelers vanished on lonely paths, wagons never reached their destinations, and mothers warned children not to wander. Some swore wolves prowled thicker than ever. Others whispered of bandits and bushwhackers. But there was one name spoken in hushed voices, usually near a fire when the night was too dark: the Holloways. Deep in the woods stood the Holloway cabin, a squat structure of rough-hewn logs, smoke curling weakly from its chimney. Inside lived Elias Holloway, once a Confederate soldier who had deserted after a bullet tore through his leg. With him was his wife, Martha, a woman with sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes, and their children, Caleb, 16 and thoughtful, Ruth, 14, quiet but observant, and Sarah, only 7, still untouched by the world's cruelty. They were dirt poor, surviving on scraps, acorns, and what little Elias could trap. Hunger gnawed at them daily, and hunger, when it lingers too long, can twist a soul. One rain-soaked evening, a knock rattled their cabin door. Standing there was Samuel Dyer, a weary peddler with kind eyes and a heavy satchel that jingled with coins and trinkets. He asked for shelter, just for the night. Martha's lips curled into something between a smile and a calculation. Elias welcomed him in, offering a space by the fire. But Caleb noticed the way his mother's eyes lingered on the man's satchel, and the way his father's hand rested on the hunting knife by the hearth. That night, the family dined as though fortune had finally favored them. Meat roasted over the flames, thick and savory, filling their empty bellies until they could hardly move. Little Sarah giggled with delight. "Mama, where did it come from?" she asked with innocent wonder. Martha silenced her with a sharp glare. Outside, the traveler's horse shifted nervously, tied loosely. By dawn, Samuel Dyer was gone, though his coins clinked in Martha's apron pocket, and the family's cellar door had been nailed shut tighter than before. Down in Benton's Fork, the nearby settlement, rumors spread like wildfire. A peddler hadn't arrived. A young couple vanished on their way west. Sheriff Thomas Grady, a scarred veteran of border wars, kept a growing list of names and dates. His eyes narrowed when all the trails pointed toward the hills where the Holloways lived. "Them or wolves," he muttered, though his gut told him it wasn't wolves. He rode out more than once, but the Holloways always greeted him with hollow smiles and empty hands. Proof was what he lacked. For now. Caleb couldn't sleep that night after Samuel's disappearance. He'd seen his father drag the body toward the cellar. He'd seen his mother wash the blood from her apron in the creek. He had eaten the stew, but every bite turned to ash in his mouth. He dreamed of Samuel's eyes staring at him, full of trust, now extinguished. Caleb whispered to Ruth one night, "This ain't right. Hunger don't excuse sin." Ruth turned her face away, torn between loyalty to her parents and the truth her brother spoke. Winter deepened, and with it came another desperate knock. This time it was a Union soldier, separated from his regiment. His boots were falling apart, his face gaunt, his voice cracked with thirst. "Just water," he begged, "and a place to rest." Elias and Martha exchanged a glance. Caleb saw it, the same unspoken decision as before. But this time, something inside him rebelled. He couldn't stand by again. Not after Samuel. Not again. That night, Elias sharpened his hunting knife, the rasping sound filling the cabin. Caleb sat in the shadows, fists clenched, praying silently. He had no Bible, but he whispered anyway, "God, don't let me be weak this time." Ruth caught his eye, and for a moment she understood. She whispered later, "You'll doom us all if you stop them." Caleb shook his head. Better starving honest than living damned. Ruth said nothing more, but she didn't betray him either. When Ruth slipped into Caleb's corner of the loft, her eyes were red. "If you mean to help him, I won't stop you." Her voice was trembling, but steady. Caleb squeezed her hand. She didn't speak of her own guilt, but he saw it in her. She too had eaten Samuel's flesh. She too had swallowed down the horror with every bite. They were children caught in a nightmare spun by their parents. But Caleb had decided, this time, he would act. At midnight, Caleb woke the soldier with a whisper. "Go. Run." Don't ask why. He pressed a crust of bread into his palm and pointed him toward the trail. The soldier staggered into the night, whispering thanks. But the cabin floor betrayed them with a creak. Elias sat up. "Who's there?" His eyes sharpened, landing on the empty mat where the soldier had lain. Rage twisted his features. He grabbed his rifle, stormed outside. A gunshot shattered the silence. Caleb's heart dropped like a stone. Snow glistened under moonlight, stained crimson where the soldier fell. Caleb screamed, rushing to him, but the wound was fatal. The soldier gasped, whispering a single word. "Ellen. Perhaps a wife. Perhaps a daughter." Then silence. Elias seized Caleb by the collar, shaking him violently. "You betray your own kin for a stranger?" Caleb shoved him back, tears streaming. The soldier's blood seeped into the snow, and Caleb knew it wasn't just his life lost. It was his own soul's burden to carry now. By spring, too many had gone missing. Sheriff Grady could no longer ignore the trail. Search parties rode the mountain paths. Bones were found half buried, horses wandering without riders. Grady's list grew longer, and every name pointed toward Holloway land. "Evil's taken root there," he told his deputy, "and I'll rip it out, proof or no." His resolve hardened. The Holloway's days of hiding in shadows were ending. Little Sarah was too young to understand. She still played with rag dolls made of corn husks, still asked her mother why guests never stayed. "They move on, child," Martha lied, brushing her hair. But Sarah noticed things. The cellar that always smelled foul, Caleb's haunted eyes, Ruth's silence. To Caleb, Sarah was the only light left in the darkness. Her laughter, untainted, reminded him of what was worth saving. For her, he swore he would not give in to despair. One morning, fists pounded on the Holloway door. Sheriff Grady stood tall with deputies behind him. "We've got questions," he said firmly. Elias tried to play the gracious host, but sweat glistened on his brow. Martha's lips pressed into a thin line. Caleb's chest tightened. Could this be deliverance or destruction? Grady's eyes scanned the family, lingering on Caleb. The boy looked as though a storm raged inside him. Grady made a note of it. "Son," he said softly, "truth don't stay buried long." Inside, the sheriff asked about missing travelers. Elias spun lies of wolves and raiders. But Grady wasn't looking at Elias. He was studying Caleb. "Boy," Grady said, his voice steady, "you've got a choice to make. You keep quiet, and the guilty walk free. Or you speak, and souls rest easier." Elias's hand clamped down on Caleb's shoulder, warning, threatening. Caleb's throat burned. He could feel his father's strength on one side and the weight of all the dead on the other. Tears welled in Caleb's eyes. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Check the cellar." The room froze. Martha shrieked, lunging at him. Deputies forced open the cellar door. What they found made even hardened men blanch. Bones stacked like kindling, skulls staring from the shadows, trinkets and torn clothes of the missing strewn like a ghastly museum. Sheriff Grady removed his hat, whispering, "Lord have mercy." Elias roared, lunging at Caleb, but deputies dragged him down, chains clanking. Chaos filled the cabin. Martha cursed, thrashing like a wildcat, spitting venom at Caleb. Elias fought like a man possessed, but deputies overpowered him. Sarah screamed in confusion, clinging to Ruth. Caleb stood trembling, knowing he had shattered his family, but also knowing it was the only way to save what little remained of their souls. Ruth whispered through tears, "You did right, Caleb." He didn't feel right. He only felt broken. The trial in Benton's Fork drew crowds from miles around. Farmers, merchants, widows, all came to hear the tale of horror. Witnesses spoke, evidence was laid bare, and the truth became undeniable. Elias and Martha Holloway were condemned, their names forever cursed. Caleb and Ruth, spared for their youth and reluctant part, were set free, though whispers followed them everywhere. Little Sarah, clutching Caleb's hand, knew only that her world had crumbled. But Caleb swore to himself he'd build something new, something better, for her sake. The years that followed were hard. Caleb worked the fields, struggling to keep food on the table for his sisters. They were marked by the Holloway name, but Caleb tried to teach them another way. "We take what the land gives," he said, "never what belongs to another soul." Ruth grew strong beside him, and Sarah grew into a kind-hearted girl. The weight of the past never left Caleb, but he bore it as penance, determined to carve out a life that was honest, even if the world never forgave. Decades later, Caleb lay on his deathbed, gray-haired and weary, yet with eyes softer than the boy he once was. Sarah, now a woman grown, sat beside him, her hands gentle. She had become a midwife, delivering children, saving mothers, bringing life into the world where once her family had stolen it. "Because you chose truth," she told Caleb, "we became more than our sins." "You saved us." Tears rolled down Caleb's cheeks. The Holloway story had begun with hunger and horror, but it ended with something else: redemption. From blood-soaked ground, compassion had bloomed. And so, the tale of the Holloways was not just one of fear, but of choice, of how even in darkness, one spark of mercy can light the way to forgiveness.